Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I analyze the case of Dennis Dechaine? Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I will put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. First, I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the crime, then offer my analysis. Dennis Dechaine was born on October 29, 1957, and lived in the state of Maine. His mother died when he was 9 years old, and his father died when he was 14. Dennis graduated from high school in 1976 and went to college to study agricultural business management. He graduated from college in 1979. Dennis moved to the state of Washington to enroll in another college. There he met a woman named Nancy. The couple married in September 1983. They moved to Maine and eventually purchased a farm in Sagadahoc County. Now moving to the timeline of the crime. On July 6, 1988, 12-year-old Sarah Margaret Cherry was at the home of John and Jennifer Hankel on Lewis Hill Road in Bowdoin, Maine. She was there to babysit their 10-month-old daughter, Monica. Jennifer left the house at about 9 a.m., so only Sarah and Monica were in the house. Concerned that Sarah would accidentally lock herself out of the house, Jennifer did not lock the door as she exited. Jennifer called Sarah at around noon to check in. Sarah indicated that she was feeding Monica and preparing to make hot dogs for her own lunch. When Jennifer returned home at about 3:20 p.m., she discovered a car repair bill and a notebook on her driveway. Both of them belonged to Dennis Dechaine. The Hankel family did not know who Dennis was. Jennifer noticed the garage level and the upper level doors to her house were slightly ajar. Inside her house, Jennifer found her daughter Monica asleep in her crib. Sarah Cherry's eyeglasses, blue jean jacket, sneakers, and socks were in the house, and nothing appeared to be disturbed or damaged. There was no sign of Sarah. It was like she had disappeared into thin air. After searching for about a half hour with no success, Jennifer contacted the police. Here's what the police found during the course of their investigation. A neighbor of the Hankels, named Holly Johnson, said that at about 1 p.m., she heard a vehicle slow down at the Hankels' house and heard the Hankels' dog barking. About 15 minutes later, she saw a red pickup truck driving north on Lewis Hill Road. It may have been a Toyota. Dennis Dechaine drove a red 1981 Toyota pickup truck. On the same day, July 6, at about 8:45 p.m., Dennis had emerged from the woods near Dead River Road and was spotted by a married couple named Harry and Helen Buttrick. The couple was in a motor vehicle just a few hundred feet from their home. They stopped and asked Dennis what he wanted. Dennis told the couple that he had become lost while fishing and could not find his pickup truck. The Buttricks drove to their home. Helen remained there as Harry drove Dennis around the area to locate the missing pickup truck. Helen contacted the police, hoping they could assist with locating the truck. The police found Harry and Dennis and made contact. Dennis entered the police vehicle and told the officer the same story about becoming lost. He said that he had locked his keys in his pickup truck. The police explained to Dennis how they were investigating the disappearance of a 12-year-old girl. They also questioned him about the documents found on the Hankels' driveway. Dennis responded, quote, "Whoever grabbed the girl saw these, placed them at the head of the driveway to set me up," unquote. When the police moved Dennis to a different vehicle, they found his pickup truck keys under the seat of the police vehicle. Dennis would later claim that he hid the keys there because he was afraid the police would become aggressive if he admitted that he had the keys to the pickup truck the entire time. At 12:05 a.m., now on July 7, the police found the Toyota pickup truck owned by Dennis 75 feet from Hallowell Road. This was about 3 miles from the Hankel family house. Dennis was dropped off at his home by the police at about 4 a.m., although they kept him under surveillance. On July 8, at about 12:20 p.m., 2 days after Sarah Cherry went missing, her body was found in a wooded area just 400 feet from where the pickup truck was found. Sarah's body was partially concealed under brush. She was bound, gagged, and had been the victim of an assault of a sexual nature. She had been strangled with a scarf. Sarah had sustained many small stab wounds to her head, neck, and chest. It's possible that these had been caused by a penknife. Dennis typically carried a penknife on his keychain. The rope used to tie Sarah's hands and a rope fragment found in the woods between the truck and her body matched rope found in the truck owned by Dennis. On the same day that Sarah's body was found, July 8, a detective paid a visit to Dennis at his house. Dennis approached the detective's vehicle and said, quote, "I can't believe I could do such a thing. The real me is not like that. I know me. I couldn't do anything like that. It must be somebody else inside of me," unquote. Dennis was placed under arrest. The police noted the penknife was missing from his keychain. When he was booked at the police station, Dennis said, quote, "It should have never happened. Why did I do this?" unquote. Later he said, quote, "I didn't think it actually happened until I saw her on the news. Then it all came back to me. I remembered it," unquote. Dennis cried and made other incriminating statements of a similar nature. A corrections officer claimed that Dennis said, quote, "You people need to know that I'm the one who murdered that girl, and you may want to put me in isolation," unquote. Another corrections officer claimed that Dennis made a similar statement. On August 1, 1988, Dennis Dechaine was indicted for several crimes, including murder. The trial for Dennis started on March 6, 1989. Dennis testified on his own behalf. He stayed with the story that he had become lost in the woods near Hallowell Road, except now he said that he had originally visited the area to use drugs. On March 18, 1989, Dennis Dechaine was convicted on all counts. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Dennis has appealed his conviction several times. There was blood under the fingernails of Sarah Cherry. The testing of this blood became the basis of the appeals. DNA tests were performed in 1993 and 1994, which concluded that the blood under Sarah's fingernails was contributed by at least 2 donors. Dennis was excluded as a donor. In 2004, another DNA test was conducted. The results indicated that the blood came from Sarah Cherry and at least 1 additional person. Dennis could be excluded as a donor. Despite these small victories, Dennis was not successful in his appeals. At the time I am making this video, Dennis continues to serve his life sentence. Now moving to my analysis. Dennis Dechaine maintains his innocence, and he has a significant number of extremely loyal supporters. They argue that someone else killed Sarah Cherry. Dennis was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. The state, of course, disagrees. They believe that Dennis is guilty. This brings me to the question, was Dennis guilty of murder? Let's take a look at the evidence both for and against the idea that Dennis was guilty, starting with the inculpatory factors. On July 5, 1988, which was the day before the murder, a pickup truck matching the description of the one owned by Dennis was spotted near the Henkel residence. It drove past the residence, turned around, and then drove past it again. This makes it seem like Dennis was spying on the property before the murder. On the day of the murder, a witness saw a red pickup truck heading north away from the Henkel house and thought the vehicle may have been a Toyota. Sarah's body was eventually found at a location north of the house. A car repair bill and a notebook were found on the Henkel driveway. Both of these items belonged to Dennis. Dennis strangely emerged from the woods not far from where the body was located. He had a bizarre story about getting lost while fishing. Dennis later admitted he lied and said that he was using drugs in the woods. The rope used on the victim and the rope found between her body and the pickup truck were consistent with rope found in the truck. Dennis had a fresh 1 to 2.5 inch scratch on his inner left arm, a circular bruise on his left arm, and a circular scratch on his right knuckle. He was missing a penknife that he typically had on his keychain, and some of the injuries to Sarah looked like they could have been caused by a small knife. Dennis allegedly made multiple incriminating statements to the police and to corrections officers. Moving to the exculpatory factors, only 7 people knew that Sarah Cherry was babysitting on Lewis Hill Road on July 6, 1988. the Hankels, 4 members of Sarah's family, and a friend of hers. How did Dennis know that Sarah would be there, and be there without an adult present? No physical evidence connected Sarah to the pickup truck owned by Dennis. No DNA or blood were found on Dennis Dechaine's clothing. DNA from the blood found under Sarah's fingernails did not match Dennis. Dennis had no history of violence and appeared to be a stable and productive member of society. The confessions that Dennis allegedly made were not recorded, and they contained no details of the crime. When considering all the evidence, do I think that Dennis Dechaine was guilty of murder? Yes, I believe he was guilty, beyond a reasonable doubt. What do I think happened in this case? This is just a theory, my opinion. I think that Dennis had been targeting Sarah for a short time, which explains why he drove by the Henkel house the day before the murder. He had somehow become aware that she would be there, but he wasn't exactly sure of the time. On the day of the murder, Dennis pulled into the driveway of the Henkel house. He dropped the identifying documents from his pickup truck, which would later be recovered on the driveway. Dennis managed to coerce Sarah into the pickup truck without violence, which explains why there was no sign of a struggle. This also explains why no physical evidence connecting Dennis to the murder was found in his truck. After the murder, Dennis behaved in a bizarre fashion because of intense feelings, drug use, or both. He implicated himself and was arrested. If Dennis had not dropped the documents and had driven away from the crime scene instead of pretending he was lost, he probably never would have been caught. Despite reasonably convincing evidence, many people believe that Dennis was wrongly convicted. I think a lot of this is driven by a distrust for the police. For example, some people don't believe that Dennis actually confessed. Why didn't the police have him sign a confession? Why did they fail to record the confession? And why did Dennis offer no specific information in his confessions? There is this sense that when looking at the statements he supposedly made, they could have been misinterpreted. Maybe the police wrote down the statements in a slightly different manner than what Dennis actually said, and thereby changed the meaning. Those who support Dennis have a point. The behavior of law enforcement in this case was suspicious. Similarly, the results of the DNA tests do not point to Dennis as the killer. I think the problem for Dennis really comes down to those documents found on the Henkel driveway. There is no good explanation for how those documents arrived there. Dennis later told the authorities that he had relieved himself on the driveway of a house that looked like the Henkel house, as if he was simply another victim of an unfortunate driveway urination selection situation. Maybe Dennis was arguing that bad things always happen to him, like the rain in Maine falls mostly on Dechaine. Now moving to my final thoughts. The case of Dennis Dechaine demonstrates how people can fall down a rabbit hole when examining the details of any criminal case. Even a case where guilt is clear can become murky if certain exculpatory factors become the focus and the larger weight of the inculpatory factors is dismissed. Dennis committed a horrible crime against a victim who was completely innocent. He had a fair trial, and he had numerous appeals, yet his guilt is just about as clear now as it was on the day he was convicted. There are definitely mysterious cases out there which warrant further investigation to make sure that a person was not wrongly convicted. This case is not one of those. Those are my thoughts in the case of Dennis Dechaine. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be informative. Thanks for watching.